Again, as I say, you've got a dashboard, so hopefully you're familiar with using that. So just type away, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. What I would like from you, if you don't mind, just how are you feeling after the last 2 days of the training? Just any thoughts you may have at all, please feel free to write them down. I'd really appreciate it. Is it been beneficial to you? Has it been positive? If you had negative ideas about trust, has it turned your mind around, or you still have doubts about it, etc.? Just jot it down. I'd be really appreciated. I can have a look at that. Whilst you're doing that, as well as there's any questions that's come up in your mind over the last 2 days that you want to, have clarified or cleared up, any kind of issues in your mind, and again, feel free to type away. The webinars, I'm literally just, once I finish tonight, I should have them up and running, ready for the morning. I've been absolutely exhausted after the webinars for the last 2 nights, so I've not been able to keep my eyes open to keep everything going when I finish. But most of the videos have now been. There's a big conversion process so that when I upload it on the server, everyone can actually watch it on their computers, because some people have PCs, some people have Macs. And if I use it in the default standard that my system saves it as, there would be problems. So it does take a little bit of time, unfortunately. But it will be available, I'm hoping, for tomorrow morning, that you can have access to that and watch it over again. With regards to, so I hope that answers the question. I've had a few people say it's loud and clear, eye-opening, which is really nice. Completely overwhelmed. Would have expected to pay good money even for the free training we have had over the last 2 days. Thanks very much for that comment, appreciate it. The quote that you read last night regarding mortgages was captivating, and I have decided to order Equity Stirring. Yeah, it's a brilliant book, so please do so. Personally, I have no doubts, as I'm still not 100% sure how I'm supposed to use trust. I'm still waiting for the eureka moment when it all fits into place. Hopefully, when I listen to the audio again, I will, if I don't get it tonight. Okay. Very insightful. Couldn't dream of a better webinar, especially when free. That's very true. I'm trying to think about the eureka moment. To me, I've had loads, but it depends on where you are, I guess, personally, and how you want to use them. Another feedback is, can you do a recap of last night? Feel asleep towards the end. Oh, thanks very much. Okay, I'll definitely do a recap anyway. That's no problem. To try and do my best to make sure everything's all clear. All right, so let's without further ado, let's move forward. I did have a couple of questions from someone last night and this morning. I'm just trying to remember what they were. But let me do the recap first, and hopefully it'll come back to me to go over some of the questions. We will be getting access to a copy of this webinar to listen to it again. Yeah, definitely. That's I thought that was your answer the first time. Sorry, Plamen. So what was your first question then, Plamen? I didn't understand. Oh yeah, it's the same thing. Yeah, so definitely we will be, everyone who's on this webinar who has signed up will definitely get access to listen to the webinar again and have access to it shortly anyway. That's not still mind blown. You've opened my mind to the massive knowledge gap I now have. Awesome, that's good, excellent feedback. Right, so that's it. Okay, so got Dorian that says, how do we deal with the naughty trustee who refuses to comply and keeps writing back, saying they are not trustees? Okay, we can go over that. That's no problem. Which of the books on trust will be the first to obtain? If you're brand new to trusts, then it would be Gilbert's Law Summaries. How to deal with a solicitor who doesn't accept trusteeship? Okay, and you've certainly filled in some of the gaps that I had. Okay, thanks a lot for that, Joe. Appreciate it. As I said, there's only so much I can do on a webinar, but I'll try and address. But let's just go through a recap, and then we can move forward. Okay, so we basically started on Wednesday, and we looked at trusts in general. or specifically private trusts. Now, obviously you understand the roles and the relationships. That's what we went through in terms of establishing a trust. You understand, hopefully, a lot more about trust per se, such as obviously the relationships that are made with you at the moment are all pretty much constructive. So in other words, most people don't know or didn't know that they were the settlor. And so you having all these third parties in a fictional capacity creating relationships without you realizing. Obviously, you've got the beneficiary, one who has use or benefits of the property, and we have the trustee, who is the one who administrates or typically makes payments. So when you're in the public realm, if you've got an asset that you've signed and given to your bank, for example, say for a credit card, they've pretty much construed a trust relationship with you. So it's the foundational relationship over and above any other type of relationship, such as DC, or what we call debtor creditor. What do I mean by that? Well, effectively, you didn't know you were the settlor, and we've just sorry, let's change pen colour here. You thought you were getting a loan. Most of us believe that the bank was the one providing the funds. You sign what we call an agreement. Okay, you do understand that when your loan is called a loan agreement, not a contract. An agreement is the language of trusts. Okay, an agreement pretty much means that everything is in a unidirectional scenario, right? The obligation is only in one direction. Okay, and the one who's obliged to do something is typically the trustee. And the one who makes the agreement is typically the settlor, the one who signs. Okay. Now, as you are aware, the settlor can be the trustee. Yes. But an agreement is only in one direction. An example of an agreement is very simply, if I tell my daughter to go and tidy up her room, it's not on condition of, like, go tidy up your room. And if you tidy up your room, then I'll take you to the cinema. That's a contract. An agreement is you will tidy up your room, or else. That's it. No, end of story. There's no room for bargaining. There's no two-way obligation or directions going on, which you would be in a contract situation. It's just an agreement. An agreement is very powerful. Okay. So that's where we are now. With regards to a contract, then obviously it's just the way I look at contracts is an agreement in two directions, effectively. So both, or how many parties there are in the contract, will be expressing their agreements, and that's why both parties would sign that contract, because they're both agreeing to doing something. So really and truly, an agreement is the most powerful form. Someone's asked a question, what's an executive agreement? I'm not too sure, to be fair. I don't know if anyone on the call knows what an executive agreement is. Where have you heard that before? I mean, there are executive relationships, and I know there's pretty much just all in the DC world where it's just a contractual relationship, effectively. But coming across the word executed agreement, I'd have to look it up. I'm not too sure, to be fair. So, just coming back to the part with regards to your contract or your agreements in the public, let's use a loan or mortgage, stick to a loan. It's called an agreement. I don't know if you realise that, but that is the case. So they're telling you already that it's a trust relationship. And who's the one that signed that agreement? If you want to type in your answer with a Y or an N, If you don't know, if you do know, then just type in who. That's right. You're the one that signed the agreement. So if you sign the agreement, who is the settlor? Right. That's right. You are. Okay. However, the point I was trying to make, if you've got a loan agreement, whose terms? Who wrote the terms on that agreement? Whatever, banks are us. Right, they did. Banks are us wrote the agreement, but you signed it. Okay? You didn't. Now, you just thought you were entering into a loan agreement. On the surface of it, it's a debtor-creditor relationship, because at the end of the day, you signed this document with a general endorsement. All right, it wasn't restricted, so it's a general relationship. You didn't actually state who you were in that relationship. You didn't know you was entering into a trust relationship, and the fact of the matter is, because it was general, then on the surface of it, it doesn't necessarily have to come across as a trust to you. All right. Now, in law, a constructive trust is not a trust in restrictive terms. It's only there to progress I say progress law. I'm talking about the fictional law, all right, legal sense. Okay, does everyone understand what I mean when I say that? It's not strictly a true trust. All right, the fact it's constructive means it's been construed, right, made up. Does everyone understand that? Please just type in a Y if you do. If you don't, let me know. Just going through a recap here. So the fact that they've construed something against you, and it's not really a trust, it's just there to progress law, or to, by operation of law, it's allowed, it's legal, then they're just getting away with what they want to get away with. And you are operating under their destructive guise. All right. So as far as you're concerned, it's just a debtor-creditor relationship on the surface, but in actuality, they have constructed a trust against you. All right. And you can now prove a trust because you understand that it's been signed. There are terms. Okay. There's an asset, which again is your equitable asset. So you're operating in that realm. Your asset is specific. Okay, but the fact that you didn't endorse it, the fact that it's very general, they were able to construe the relationships how they wanted to do it, and you didn't define it how you wanted to define it. So therefore, they're operating with on the surface in a trust relationship with you. All right, so you can recognise a trust. Now you understand what trusts are to a better degree. You should be able to recognise if someone's trying to establish a relationship with you. All right, as long as you can define the parties. And on the courses, this is what we're going to be labouring on, defining the relationships, opening your equitable eyes. Something that we talk about a lot on the course, which I don't think I've really mentioned much on this webinar, is the nature of things versus the character. All right, nature versus the character. The best way I can describe it is when Jesus sent out 70 disciples to go and just go and speak to the people in the local community, and he said, go there, don't take any money with you, don't take any kind of goods with you, just knock on the people's doors, and if they welcome you, then you go and make yourself present there and bring peace to the home. If not, wipe the dust off your feet and move on. And he gave them instructions. He said, I want you to be as wise as serpents and as harmless as doves. I don't know if you can see that, because I'm sending you as a lamb, because you are amongst wolves in sheep's clothing. So he's telling them, as much as you're there to do a good job, don't be deceived. All right, look out, see what's going on, be sharp, have your wits against you. However, don't go out there to make trouble. All right. Then he says, I'm sending you among wolves in sheep's clothing. Pretty much how we are living in the world today. So the character versus the nature. The character, all right, is the sheep. I don't know if you can see that. Okay, the character is the sheep. The nature is the wolf. All right, and this is the essence of equity versus common law or at law. All right, can you recognize the nature of the relationship versus the character of the relationship? So we'll spend a lot of time on that because they use tricks, i.e. something that is in character looks the case, but in nature is not. In other words, the substance versus the form. A lot of paperwork and writing and form filling out is, that's the character. But what's the nature? So in other words, it comes back to what equity is saying. Equity looks at the substance. This is a maxim that we went over yesterday. Equity looks at the substance of a thing and not the form. Equity doesn't go by what you said. Equity goes by what you have done, your deeds. So to answer the question, Dorian, the question I'll repeat for the group: if what we teach, especially on by the time you finish the first course, is effectively how to express the trust. I am still recapping, by the way, so please don't mind me. I'm just going through it each step. You learn how to express a trust. Once you've expressed the trust, you have to establish the trust. So you do it in order to prove trust. And once the trust has vested or is in place, you have clean hands because you have actually paid. Well, not you. Well, this is a test, actually. If you're the settlor and you've established yourself as the beneficiary and you've assigned trustees and you've put an equitable asset into trust, okay, and you have a creditor out there called a bank, whatever it is, and they want 100 grand off you, here's a question: who has paid the debt? Please type in the answers, everyone. Just type in your answers, and I'll come back to you in a minute, Agnes, with your answer to your question. Right, so most people come back with a good answer. Brilliant. So someone says me. Most people said the trustee. Some people said the settlor. Someone says the debt is not paid, but you have provided the means for trustee to pay. Trustee is meant to be in this context. Settlor, but not sure why. Okay. As far as I'm concerned, once the trust has vested, in other words, the trust has been established, the trustee is in office. It's an office that he is compelled to perform. He's obliged to perform. Okay? Equity regards as done what ought to be done. In other words, it's already done. So if you haven't done it, you are acting unconscionably and you are in violation. Does everyone understand that point? Equity regards as done what ought to be done. It's a done deal. Once you've established and expressed the trust, and the trust has vested and has been constituted, and you've been given the trustees instructions with timescales, etc., equity says it is already done. Yeah, it is already done. So if the trustee has not done what he is supposed to have done, then therefore he's in violation and he is currently acting unconscionably towards you. Okay, which then will open up another door, which says another maxim. That's why you've got to learn the 12. Equity will not allow a wrong without a remedy. Equity looks at the substance rather than the form. Equity aids the vigilant and not those who sleep on their rights. I'm just going over the key maxims that I can remember. Equity will, this is mega key, impute, he said it will impute an obligation. The obligation is the declaration you put in your trust. It will impute an obligation to fulfill, equity will impute a intention, to fulfill an obligation. He's going to correct your mind. Let me write that out neater. Equity will impute or make you think a certain way to fulfill an obligation. He will make the trustee think conscionably to fulfill your demands. Only 12 maxims to learn. Now, let's go back. So therefore, once a trust has vested and is constituted and is in place, the settlor, I don't know if you remember, comes out of the equation and the title splits into two: beneficial, possessory, or legal. So, possessory, right, or legal title. Trustee has the asset. It's not your job to know how he's going to do what he's got to do. Or you know, you've given him a decree, you've given him a declaration, he is obliged to perform. Equity regards as done what ought to be done. You've told him what needs to be done, it's done. If he hasn't performed, then he has to answer. Simple as that. The trust, to answer the question I asked a minute ago, the trust pays the debt, not you. You enjoy the benefits of what this so-called loan gives you. All right? But you're not obliged to pay it back. The trust isn't that. Remember what I told you yesterday about your rights? Everyone has the right to either pay or make a settlement directly or put it in trust. In other words, make yourself a trustee or someone else a trustee, put it into trust for the trust to make the payment or the settlement, as the book says. So therefore, you got to remember, it's not you. Your job is to use whatever the facility is, enjoy the benefits of what the facility is, but as far as you're concerned, anything regarding payment is the job and the duty of a trustee. Does everyone understand that point? Okay. So to come back to Dorian's question now, if a trustee has received the paperwork and he has not sent the paperwork back, there is substantial case law to confirm that he has accepted his position. All right. There are certain things which I'm not going to discuss on this webinar. There are certain procedures which one has to fulfill, especially in the capacity of a solicitor who is expected to know how to administrate trusts, because they're competent individuals, of how to disclaim their trusteeship. And writing a letter saying I don't recognise a trust is not a disclaimer of a trusteeship position. All he's saying is I don't recognise the legalities of what's going on. That's not your job for you to educate the trustee, because a notice, remember, only makes you aware of your rights. It doesn't tell you what your rights are. So that ignorance of the law is no excuse. Saying you don't recognise it has nothing to do with you at all. That is not disclaimer. Now, if they send the paperwork back, then you might have to question mark of one if they've accepted or not. Because remember, equity looks at the substance and not the form. Writing me a letter telling me that you do not recognise a document, especially when you're the agent to the person who's causing you grief, does not allow me to recognise the fact that you don't recognise trusts. So you have accepted, and my declaration will state the terms of how long you've got to not accept. But it's not for you to tell the trustee how to disclaim. Now, if they don't understand, they need to go and seek their lawful advice or legal advice and know what to do. But if they've kept the paperwork, because they can't be seen to be sending it back as solicitors, because then they're blatantly in violation of their own personal duties which they're signed up for as counsellors and members of the bar, then effectively they cannot disclaim as trustees. But they are very good at playing games with you or operating deceptively. Now, remember what I said before. I'm just going back from the biblical quote, looking at the nature versus the substance, nature versus the what did I say? Character. The character is saying, well, I don't recognise the trust, but what's the nature? They've kept the document. Equity looks at the substance rather than the form. I can't draw that enough. This is all a mind shift for a lot of us, because we're very used to looking at, well, what did he say, etc., and the legalities of things. But equity looks at, well, what did he do? What was his actions? I'll give you an example. Mother and child goes to a shop. Mother does the shopping. Child sees a wonderful, pretty sweet, all wrapped up in lovely colours. He just takes the sweet, puts it in his pocket. The security guard notices this, doesn't say anything. Then the mother walks out the shop with the baby, and then he says, "Right, I'm arresting you for theft." I know it's it's a stupid example, but it's not a stupid example. Sorry, it's elaborated, but it's to highlight the point. Now, before a judge, the question would be this: A, who stole the sweet? The baby. Okay. Well, under the eyes of the law, you're responsible for the baby. So legally, I have to fine you, or legally, you have to go into prison. Legally, all right? Now, under equity, what was your intention? Well, certainly wasn't to steal the sweet. What was the child's intention? Well, it's a child. So therefore, it's an honest mistake. Put the sweet back, on your way. It's like in common law, when you had common law juries. Yeah, real men and women that would make a decision. Was it murder? Was it manslaughter? Was it premeditated or not? This is all equitable stages. It's like the story in the Bible with King Solomon and the two women arguing over one baby. Yeah? So King Solomon basically made the decision, well, let's cut it in half. Knowing full well that the real mother would, because he loves the child, she loves the child so much, would rather give the child to the other woman to see the child live than stand in front of the child and see it cut in half. Then the king knew exactly who was the real mother, because he looked at the substance, not what they were saying. He looked at the actions. This is equity. Am I making my point very clear? So, questions now. So must we state in the declaration how long they have to disclaim? Yes, absolutely. Or can we just say in the notice that they have 3 days? In my declaration, I'll state it, personally. to raising the issues as a prudent person would. I'm not giving them the opportunity to raise an issue. That's up to them. I've declared them to be trustee, so be it. If they don't agree to it, then they know what to do. It's not my job to tell them. Another example, trustee says he has disclaimed but is still holding trust property. Exactly. Now, what do you think after what I've just said? Oh, sorry, this is Kevin. Sorry. Another example, trustee says he's disclaimed but is still holding trust property. The form. So he is still holding trust property. The form is him saying he doesn't accept the trust. That's the nature. Is he still holding trust property? Exactly. You can't disclaim and still be holding trust property. That's the whole nature of a trust, that the trustee is in receipt of the trust property. That is the nature of a trust. Once the trust has been transferred, in other words, delivered, i.e. the trustee holds the title of the property, the trust is in place. Once the settlor has done his part, which is he has shown his intent to create a trust, he can prove delivery. I went to the post office. I sent it by private special delivery. Here is my receipt, Your Honour. How can anyone dispute the intention of the trustee, of the settlor, to get it in the hands of the trustee? It's all about the substance. God looks at the heart. You look at the Bible story. Just look at King David. The prophet Samuel's going to Jesse, the father of David. I think he had 7 brothers. All of them were nice, good standing young men, upstanding young men, all good looking, all tall, all in the army, all got it going on. And Samuel, the prophet, goes for each one, and God says, no, this is not the one, this is not the one. And here's little David, the ruddy little shepherd boy, smelly, on the fields, looking after the sheep, youngest out of all of them. And God says, this is the one who I want to anoint. And everyone's like, who? This little one over there? And then the answer come back from, well, God looks at not at the outward appearance, but at the inward appearance, the heart. Yeah, the heart of a lion, a giant. Yeah, that's what he's looking at. So this is equity looks at the substance rather than the form. More questions coming. So basically, set up the trust to cover your bills, which will never get physically paid, but you are not liable and creditors can't touch you. What I'm saying is the trust has been set up to extinguish the debt. All right. What the settlor, what the trustees have to do, that's not your business. You've instructed him, extinguish the debt with the asset that you have in your hands. The way that we'll teach you, the trust will be set up to self-extinguish, shall we say. All right. So in other words, it will eliminate any title at all. There's no title, there's no debt. If there's no title, so in other words, if you've got an account number 12345 with Banks R Us, which is the title to a loan account, which happens to be your account number, and you establish the trust by expressing the trust that they construed with you, all right, which I talked about briefly yesterday. Once you set the trust up properly, effectively you have 2 trusts. You've got a constructive trust and an express trust. And remember, if the titles are merged, there is no trust. And this is what we're going to show you how to do. So if there's no trust, there's no title. There's no title, there's no debt. And if there's no debt, then you have no issues. So once you can prove the trust, it's downhill. That's why it's so important to know how to express the trust. Okay? So, Dorian, but if a disclaim or refuse after the period settlor has allowed, even if they return the res, trust is vested. Exactly, and you can prove that. Yeah? Transfer of title occurred, even if they decided to send it back later. Exactly. They were noticed. Give them ample time. I would say give them 28 days if you're in a hurry. 7 or 14 days. But 28 days, I've not seen, in all the cases that I've dealt with, but either personally or with clients, I've not seen it happen. For me personally, anyway, returning back to us. Yeah, you can give 3 days, but you don't want to give any judge room for the manoeuvre, because they'll try and find any worm to wiggle, any hole to wiggle out of. So if I'm giving you plenty or ample time, and you've not done anything, then you've fulfilled your part. You've got nothing to worry about. But again, every circumstance is unique and individual. All right. So it just depends on how it goes. And then we're going to show you other very key bits of information, credible, powerful information that proves that they can't disclaim and that they accept trusteeship. So you've got so much evidence in your support. All right. So, but solicitors in the legal world are very good at just creating controversy, and they will do whatever they can. You know, we've got one case, I can't mention it because it's private, but, you know, that person knows who they are. I think he's on the call tonight. But effectively, this has been going on for like nearly a year. And when we first started with this case, you know, if I'll be honest, they didn't believe what was going on. And now, if just to look back and think, hang on a minute, I had 120 grand debt over my head, and today I've not even paid a penny, something must be up. And thank God I can move forward. All right, so all I can, exactly, yeah, he's giving me a smile. So that's what I'm trying to say. You just got to know how to play the game, and this is what we're going to be teaching you. But it's not something you can just, if you just pick up a book and read it by yourself without experience of what's going on, you know, we're going to run into trouble, you know. And yeah, effectively, that's all I can say. So there's another question from, no, I think I've answered Dorian's question. So the maxims are vital for your enforcement, because you've got to remember, we're not fighting them in their world, in their fictional world. We are coming into equity. Equity is coming to our aid, and we're utilizing that to our benefits. And you have to always remember that we're looking at the nature, the substance, and not the form of what they're saying. So don't get drawn in their world, because if you go to court or deal a lot with letters with them, if you've ever had experience of going to court, all the judge is doing is creating controversy and trying to draw you into their argument so they can make the excuse to have a judgment against you. So we're going to show you how to resist that and put everything in your position. And this is something you're going to have to practice. It's an art more than a science. All right? So that's effectively where we're going with this. So I hope that makes more sense. So let's get back to... So we talked about nature versus character, which is a major crux of opening your equitable eyes. Once you can get the fact and get used to in your mind, asking yourself the question, what's the nature? What's going on really? Yeah, rather than the character. Even something as simple as getting the courtroom into the private, you got to ask yourself the question, what's the nature versus the character? You know, and you read the case law and it tells you black and white. Yeah, you read case law where there's got two judgments, one in equity and one at law, just trying to arrive to a simple decision. Yeah, you can make requests and petitions in equity in that jurisdiction. All right, so it's for us to be as wise as serpents and as harmless as doves. It's us to operate as because we are in a den of wolves, quite frankly, who are dressed up in sheep's clothing. You know, you think they they look nice, they come across as being nice, but they're just there to kill you. All right, and there's one of my favourite scriptures in Matthew 12. I'm going to read it to you because it's basically what was happening. Jesus was going out, casting out demons and helping people, get through life effectively. And the same Jewish scholars were accusing him and falsely and saying, well, for you to be, driving out demons, you must be a demon yourself. In fact, you must be the head demon. So Jesus gives them a really strong reply. And he says, well, let me get it for you so I can read it. Right, so it says, right, so, but when the Pharisees heard it, they said, the fellow, let me read it in a better translation, because this King James can be a bit confusing sometimes. Right, so, I'll start from, it's Matthew chapter 12 I'm reading from, and I'm going to read it quick from verse, I'm going to pick it up from verse 21. It says, and in and on his name will the Gentiles or the people outside of Israel set their hopes. Then a blind and dumb man under the power of a demon was brought to Jesus, and he cured him. So that blind man and dumb man both spoke and saw. And all the crowds of people were stunned with the bewildered wonder and said, "This cannot be the son of David, can it?" But the Pharisees, those were the Jewish scholars back in the day, hearing it, said, "This man drives out demons only by and with the help of Beelzebub, who's supposed to be the prince of demons," right, the king demon. And knowing their thoughts, this is Jesus, knowing their thoughts, he said to them, "Any kingdom that is divided against itself is being brought to desolation and laid to waste. And no city or house divided against itself will last or continue to stand. And if Satan drives out Satan, he has become divided against himself and disunified. So how then will this kingdom last or continue to stand?" That's the question that Jesus throws back at them. "And if I drive out demons by the help of the king or chief demon, Beelzebub, by whose help do your sons drive them out? For this very reason they shall be your judges. But if it is by the Spirit of God that I drive out demons, then the kingdom of God has come upon you before you expected it. Or how can a person," this is the crux I'm trying to make here, verse 29, "how can a person go into a strong man's house and carry off his goods," that's the entire equipment of his house, "without first binding the strong man?" Who do you think the strong man is? That's the question I'm asking you. I'll read it again. "How can a person go into a strong man's house and carry off his goods," that's the entire equipment of his home, "without first binding the strong man?" That's a question that Jesus posed. "Then indeed he may plunder or take the goods of his house. So he who is not with me, definitely on my side that is against me, and he who does not definitely gather with me and from my side scatters. Therefore I tell you," well, let me just stop there. So basically the question I want to ask you is, who do you think the strong man is? Because the question is exactly where the strong man. So how do you think they can go and take your houses, take your money, take your children, arrest you? Let me reread it. That's I'm putting it in modern day vernacular. So how can you first bind the strong man or plunder the strong man's house, plunder what's his, unless you first plunder him or bind him first? All right. So the chapter and verse is Matthew chapter 12. And I picked it up from verse 22. The key scripture here is verse 26 to 28 and 29. Okay, I'll read it again. It says, "But if it is by the Spirit of God that I drive out demons, then the kingdom of God has come upon you." Okay, so therefore, Jesus is saying that the kingdom of God is what's driving out the demons, not your stupid falsehoods. All right, but he's now saying the analogy or the parable, or how can a person go into a strong man's home and carry off his goods, which is what they're doing to you every day, all right? Okay, the entire equipment of his home, without first binding the strong man, then indeed he may plunder his house. That's what they're doing to you. They bind you first. You're the strong man. They've bound you up first, and then they're going to go in and plunder your house. So let me go to now another scripture to emphasize. I mean, this whole book, as far as I'm concerned, just makes it very clear to me. But anyway, I'm going to jump across to Galatians. I'm not preaching to you, I'm just trying to emphasize, because all of it stems from this book, so you might as well teach it from the book, as far as I'm concerned. So now he says here, look, now what, this is Galatians chapter 4, by the way, verse 1. It says, "Now what I mean is that as long as the inheritor, the heir to the throne, or heir to his goods, heir to his rights, as long as the inheritor is a child and under age, he does not differ from a slave, although he is the master of all the estate." I'm going to read that back to you. If you act like a child, you are no different to a slave. Yesterday we looked at guardian ward very briefly. The guardian and ward relationship. You are considered to be a slave or a child. That's why we have representations. We have solicitors, because they see you as a child. And if you act like one, are you not aware of your rights? Act ignorant, waive your rights. Because my children, you tell them every day to do the same thing, and every day they forget. So you got to keep reminding them. So if you're going to keep acting like a child, you're going to be doing and carrying on with childish things. So if you're going to operate in trusts, you're no longer going to be a child. So it says here, as long as the inheritor or the heir is a child and under age, he does not differ from a slave. Are you a slave? That's my question to you. Although he is a master of all the estates. So although you are the owner of everything, are you a slave? That's my question to you. Are you still prepared to act like a child? Because if you operate in the realm of equity, you're no longer operating as a child. You're now aware of your rights, you're correcting your relationships, and you're operating the way you're supposed to operate. And they're going to fight you because they want to keep you in ignorance. Of course they want to keep you in ignorance. All right, now verse 2 says, but he is under guardians and administrators or trustees until the date fixed by his father. So we, as it says, Jewish Christians also, when we were minors, were kept like slaves under their rules of the Hebrew rituals and subject to the elementary teachings of a system of external observations and regulations, which is the fictional world that we're living in right now. But when the proper time had fully come, God sent his son, born of a woman, born subject to the regulations, etc. of the law, to purchase your freedom. That's why you are free, and that's why you own all things. All right, I'm not going to get too deep into the theology, but effectively, are you a child or not? Because if you have an inheritance, why are you not claiming it? Why are you not operating as one who owns? Okay? Why are you not operating as one who owns? So that last scripture I just read was Galatians chapter 4, verse 1 to 3. All right, so I'm just trying to emphasize the point here. If you're going to operate in equity, then you're operating as one who is aware of their rights. You're operating as one who's woken up. Thanks, Islam. I appreciate that. So I'm just trying to emphasize the point here. If you're operating in the realm of trusts, you are operating as the true man that you're supposed to be, not this free man malarkey that we're going to hear on the internet, because that's just too in your face, too much fighting. All you're doing is correcting the records, how you're supposed to correct the records. They did it to you. You're just reversing it back to how it should be, in the correct order, operating in the true power that you're supposed to be operating in. That's why equity still exists, and they can never get rid of it. All right, so let me come back to, still recapping 45 minutes later, but hey, there's no harm in that, because my job is to make sure you all understand where I'm coming from. I hope this is still okay for you all. Just type in whatever it is. I think everyone's still on the call, so that's no one's dropped off, so that couldn't be too bad. Right, express trust, proof of trust, vested, etc. So we understand that equity looks at the substance and not the form, okay? It looks at your deeds, your actions. How are you performing? That's why he who comes into equity must come with clean hands. If you just sat down and done anything, equity's not going to come to your aid. Yeah? We looked at a maxim yesterday, which, it's going to take at least half a day to explain on the course in its entirety for you to understand fully. It says equity follows the law. It seems like a very simple statement, but it's not as black and white as it sounds. All right? Equity, because it makes you think that the law has preeminence over equity, but that's not the case at all. Equity follows the law. Equity will follow the law where the law prevails, but it will not. God says in His word that my word shall not return unto me void or empty. It shall perform everything that I desire it to perform. Right, and that's in the book of Isaiah, I believe it's chapter 55. So if you understand that, you bring it back to equity. Equity cannot disprove itself. It has to back up itself. So if equity says like it will not allow a wrong without a remedy, it cannot just simply follow the law, especially if it says equity will not allow statute to be a cloak of fraud. So if the law is operating incorrectly, equity follows the law will then define itself in a more powerful position by saying the correct way to say is equity follows the law only when the law is correct. And if the law is subverting your freedom, your rights, then therefore equity will take over, because it will not allow a wrong without a remedy, and it will not allow a statute to be a cloak for fraud. So equity does not just simply follow the law, only where the law resides and is correct, and you have clean hands and everything else. So these are the kind of things that we're going to be going over in so much detail that when you start establishing your trusts, you'll see them from a mile away of how they operate, because you're coming from equitable position and not from their world. You're outside of their fiction and operating in the power that you should be operating in, and they can't handle you. They cannot handle you. We even had a barrister of the High Court And I was quite proud to hear this and read it by saying that the instruments which you're going to learn that we use against them were complicated. What's the other word that was used now? Keymaker might need to remind me what you used, but basically complicated and peculiar documents that our clients most probably spent a fortune paying solicitors to drafts. Yeah, advanced documents. All right. So I was quite proud because if a high level barristers saying that the documents that we're providing them and charging our clients ridiculous, stupid amounts of money for them to try and dissect, it means that it's working. All right? It means that it's working. So therefore, as far as I'm concerned, the same paperwork you're going to get on these courses, if you understand what you're saying and you can change it, write it, add to it, take away, it's up to you. But they recognize that these stuff is powerful and they don't want to deal with it. They don't want this on their hands. Yeah, we've got barristers who are waiting to get paid and they're not going to see a penny unless they do what they're supposed to do. And it frustrates them. So all I'm trying to tell you is, yeah, it's a lot of work. I'm not going to deny that at all. Yeah, it's a little bit of reading. I'm not going to deny that. The courses are not going to, it's not the silver bullet. It's just going to accelerate your learning to take away, rather than 20,000 hours of studying, you can do it in a couple of months. Perhaps if you're in a hurry, you can do it a lot quicker. It depends on your determination. But all I'm trying to say is, compared to, if you got a bag of tools, you can A for B something, you can write a promissory note to something, and you know what, they may resist you and resist you and resist you, and you know what, you think, oh, I've got no more options, but hey, you do. You got the world of equity, because you fulfilled your obligation, you've done what you're supposed to do. And that's what I love about this game. You pick your fights, and when you pick your fights, you choose what tools you're going to utilize. Am I going to bring out the handgun, or am I going to bring out the Kalashnikov, or the mega gun? Which one am I going to use to solve this problem? Yeah, am I going to make it devastating, or am I going to just make it simple, clean, and get out of there quickly? That's your choice. But it's nice to have choice, and it's nice to have options. So, in the continuation now, with regards to, so these are the equitable maxims that we talked about yesterday, and I just want to emphasize, I hope that makes more sense to you on the call now, why enforcement of your trust is so powerful. You do need to understand it. You must start with the end in mind. You cannot just start not knowing what's going to happen next. You got to forward think, what is the opposition going to do, and how can I counter that within my work? So you need to understand equity, and the best way to understand equity is to understand the maxims that govern it, rather than hundreds and thousands of statutes, acts, case law, which solicitors have to memorize. In equity, you just need to know 12 key maxims and you're done. Pretty much, that's it, you're done. Okay, so, and you're operating in the power that you need to be. So what if you've expressed the trust, appointed the directors of the company as trustee, and still they ignore and take you to court? Well, that's why we have the litigation, because then you're going to have to show them who's who and what's what. Yeah, and that's why we have the litigation part of the trust course, because you need to understand how the court system works. Yesterday, and there's a good question, Heather, let me just emphasize and highlight that in a bit more detail. I did, when we was reading Gary Watt's book at the beginning, and he talked about how equity had emerged, and we came to the part where it says that the common law and equity had fused. Now, in terms of the administrative process to get into common law, or the administrative process to get into equity, those two had fused into one body, which we now know as the High Court, yeah? Demonstrated by what we call the CPR rules, civil procedure rules, okay? Now, that means that to get into equity, it's hidden in this book. To get into common law, it's hidden in this book. And you need to know how to dissect this book, i.e. get out of the form and establish the substance to get to where you need to go. But your adversaries are trying to keep you in their fictional world. So you need to know their game. You need to know what they're doing against you so you can combat it. And that's why we have the litigation part of the course, because you need to understand court. You need to understand how to litigate, how to write your letters, how to express yourself in equity, and then how to either defend against a claim or how to establish a claim. How to, if you're in a Part 7, Part 7 and there's Part 8 procedure. Part 7 is basically what they want you to be in. Part 7 is Part 7 of CPR rules. And there's a defined method and procedure under Part 7. And Part 8 is what I believe to be the equitable part of a claim. And it's completely different to Part 7. And you need to know how to get into Part 8 and how to enforce your trust in Part 8. Now, you can enforce your trust in Part 7 because there's certain rules and procedures which we will show you and teach you. And this is now the unique part of Wealth Guidance Education Trust course, because I don't know anybody else in this country who understands how to invoke a court of equity in the UK. It's been taught for the United States, but I don't know anyone else who's been able to dissect it for the UK. And this is where we come up trumps all the time, but now we can start to see victories. So under Part 7, you can invoke a court of equity. In other words, they will act as if they were the High Court of Chancery in a county courts, all right, up to the amount of £30,000. Okay, so you can, even though, so in terms, you just got to get out of the substance and into the form of equity, and we'll show you how to do that. Then you're going to talk about, well, how do you communicate in the courtroom to get to where you want to be? And how do you recognize the substance of what you want rather than the form? If a judge is telling you that your case has no merits, what is he saying to you? If the judge says your case has no legal basis, what is he saying to you? You've got to dissect what is the nature versus the character of every word that proceeds out of a judge's mouth, because they don't mince their words. They're playing a game. They're actors. So my internet connection keeps dropping, so people don't hear everything. Don't worry about that. It's all recorded. But effectively, to answer your question, that's what we're going to show you how to do. But effectively, if it eventually goes to court, because they're using the court as their backup, you need to know how to go in there and turn it around for your good. And we'll show you some very powerful, I wouldn't say secrets, but it's very powerful methods. You can utilize this not just for your equitable trust. You can use it for liens as well, because people don't know how to enforce their liens. You can use it for pretty much anything court related, to be fair. But just something simple like how to formulate a defence and knowing the rules that they have to reply to your defence. Just like we understand that an unrebutted affidavit stands as truth in commerce, in equity, they have to respond to you. All right? Discovery. We hear everyone saying about discovery. Well, we read yesterday under the 33 rules of equity that discovery is equitable. So in other words, you can compel equitable remedies like specific performance. That is an equitable remedy. It's providing you relief in equity, and you can get an injunction against your adversary to compel them, i.e. you remember equity acts in personam, against the person and not against the thing. Yeah? So it's going to make them do something. So you need to understand the court rules in equity and how to invoke equity at any stage. And understanding what they're doing to you if it goes to court. And that you can take it, drag it along as long as you like, as long as you know what you're doing, or get rid of it. And so we're going to teach that on the litigation side, that litigation side of the course, which is the third part of the course. So a lot of role plays of court practice, how judges speak from my experience, or my guest experience. I've been to court many times, so I've seen a lot of judges. I've seen all the tricks, what they try to do against you. So we're going to throw it at you, and you're going to be practically operating in a court. Yeah, and we're going to try and make the scenario as real as possible. You're going to do the research. You're going to provide the books. You're going to read up, look at the case law, and then formulate a structured case and argue it. And you're going to see for yourself. Some of you are going to, if you go on the course, get on the Part 3 stage of the course, going to be a judge and sit down and see how a judge sees things. And you're going to say, well, if I was a judge, I would decide like this. So then when you're now operating as a defendant or a claimant, you can think about how you're going to formulate your argument, because you're getting everything on the record. You need to get everything on the record. All right. Now, the group is, I don't like big groups for this stuff, because as you're probably aware, Heather, it gets a bit too convoluted. So I want to keep it to, say, a maximum of 15 people to make it nice. comfortable, but yet, conducive for learning. Yeah. So, but yeah, more about that later on. But effectively, that's the group sizes can't be too big. But at the same time, it'll aid learning because I can spend more time with people who want to learn rather than trying to fill questions all the time. And then it's only 2 days, and I know it's from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. But that time certainly goes really quick for those who's been in my courses, because I teach. I don't teach with PowerPoint. It's not sitting down, listen to me lecture you. A lot of it is getting you to learn, and I use uncommon methods of trying to get you to do that. So I hope I've answered that question. All right. So pretty much, we're going to feel all these issues so that you will be more confident when you're left by yourself to go out there and do things. But I do encourage you to when you meet people in the course, get study partners. Just one person or 2 people who you can just call up or get together and to the point that someone won't be. I know Heather, she ain't going to mince her words. So at least if you're wrong, but you can do it in confidence, yeah? And if you're right, great, but you're with people who are not afraid to challenge your thinking and vice versa without you being offended, but yet still you both progress in your learning. That's one thing I appreciate about my study partner. Once upon a time, I was his mentor, but we come to a place now that we can have a heated discussion on I wouldn't say heated, but a long discussion on the phone to drag out a point and then get to the root of that point and then understand it with more clarity than if it was just by myself. So it makes life for learning far more powerful. And I'm sure he would agree. So, those are the kind of things that I would encourage you to do, such that you can build on your learning and be more confident to communicate when you're out on the court or in your letters and everything else, so you know what to do. Because it is a very lonely life. It can be a very lonely life because you're with people who think you're mad and don't know what you're talking about when you have it in black and white that it's true. And you're in a world who's, programmed to think one way, and effectively you're really, metaphorically speaking, unplugged. So I do encourage you to, to hook up with people who, you can communicate with without getting wound up or upset unnecessarily, and come to a conclusion of an answer. Does anyone disagree with what I'm saying here, or can you see my point? Just type in a Y or a no, whichever you feel is respectable. So just to wrap up with, I've kind of entered into the stage I want to talk about with regards to litigation, but let me just make sure I've concluded with the recap. How am I doing, Rebecca? I've not confused you, I hope, with regards to the recap. And if there's any questions, please fire away. I don't mind people asking me questions as I'm going along. You're doing really well. So as I said, part 1 will be just knowing how to express the trust to get it out of construct. And I'm going to show the letter templates the letters that I use personally, how we construct it from start to finish, looking at things like constructing deeds, constructing memorandums and all that stuff. It's putting your case together, so to speak, public notices and everything else, how we do that. And then that's pretty much part 1 out of the way. Part 2, which is enforcement. So we're going to look at how you put your trust and marry that to the equity side of things, and then start to tune yourself and your mindset into the equitable part of life rather than the part that we've been indoctrinated in, which is the at-law part of life. Then we're going to, on part 3 now, look at litigation. And what's litigation? It's basically the legal side of things. Is when it comes to the point where they're challenging you or your argument, and you've got to challenge them and get back into the scenario of winning. So after the courses, do you still provide one-to-one? Yeah, I do coaching, one-to-one coaching for anyone who needs more help over the courses. So that I try not to leave people in the lurch as much as possible. And I'll be giving a breakdown and everything towards the end in the next few minutes actually. So just hold on and I'll get that information to you. But with regards to litigation, we're going to look at the law, and we're going to look at equity and the differences between the two, but focus on equity and how you invoke the equitable part of the court, because there's something called the Judicator Acts of 1873. which effectively confirms that common law and equity, in terms of the rules, have been merged into one court and one book, so to speak, one rule book. So when you read the rules with equitable eyes, it's very equitable as far as I'm concerned. You can see it without a shadow of a doubt. When you read their statutes, and the authors who are writing these are high up, you know, master of the rolls and everything else. So they endorse equity. And when you see the court rules like pre-action protocols and making sure that you've done everything in your power to settle outside of court because you don't want to get involved with the courtroom, you know, it's all equitable. And that's why, you know, when we set up our due process procedures, whether it's for trust or for liens or whatever, you're operating in equity. And then once you understand the law and how it works, you can get cases struck out. If you move fast enough, and you know, you can control how cases move, whether you're a defendant or whether you're the claimant. You need to know what court forms look like, how to operate. So you're not going to get rid of the fear of the court, because a lot of people are scared of court, but I don't think it's a place you necessarily have to be scared of. And then you can deal with it, whether it's bankruptcy, whether it's CCJs. You know, mortgages is a different really kettle of fish to deal with. You know, that's their bread and butter. They're going to fight you with tooth and nail. So you can't be. I wouldn't suggest anyone take on mortgages by themselves until they're confident with the knowledge that they have. You know, or they've got no choice and they're just trying to get involved. But effectively, it's very powerful. All of this information, and can be used, if you set up properly, can be used for your advantage. And you know, you're hearing a lot of stories in the States where people are knocking off mortgages all the time. Over here, it's a bit more surreptitious and quiet, etc. But you know, there's still people, I believe this, and I'm sure people are successful at doing that. So, and I can see it being positive and possible because of when you see what's going on, you see their rule books, you see what has been written down, you see the law of equity and how it's powerful. You can understand, and when you invoke it in privacy, you know, you can understand things go on in the private that you just won't ever see. Because I've invoked private cases, and when you get the statute, so when you get the transcript, it will say in private. So you won't see what was discussed throughout the court case. You're only going to see the judgment that the judge makes. So it really does make you privy to how things are going on in their world. So that's what do you call it? The litigation side in a nutshell. And really, whether you have problems in the court or not, you do need to know how to operate as a litigating person in the courtroom, because someone one day will have to go to court once in their lives, at least. That I can pretty much guarantee, especially if you're going to be on this journey. Sometimes there's no two ways about it. You can't really get out of it. You just have to be prepared to fight. So and know what to do, because they're full of tricks against you and can't try and keep you ignorant, because they're operating as lambs dressed up as wolves. Sorry, wolves dressed up as lambs. And you're gonna have to see straight through them and know how to fight the game. Did you say please repeat? I'm not sure that last one. If you can just repeat that question, I can repeat whatever you need me to repeat. Did the sound go or anything like that? Just type in the if you can still hear me. Please. Okay, cool. All right. Okay, so it's 10:10, so I don't want to keep you too much longer. So I'm just going to, unless there's anything else you want me to really go into in more detail. One thing I don't think I actually finished, so I'll finish this one part. When I talked about the loan agreement, so when you express the trust, because you know who you are and you can prove that you're the settlor. Question: do you need to have done A for V promissory note before expressing the trust? No. You can go straight into expressing the trust if you wish. Right, so you got settlor, as I said, you got the loan agreement, so you can correct the records, re-establish what you want to see in your declaration. We talked about withdrawals and redeposits of assets, and so you're going to learn how to do that. and that's the process of correcting your records. And to me, that's the bingo. That's where it's all at. You're taking full control and power, if that's what you want to do. Okay, so let me go forward and ask this question. So let me answer this question first. What is the average cost for setting up a trust? What is there a cost for setting up a trust? I don't think it's just your time. Once you've been in the course, it's just your time. And sending some special delivery postage, which is what, £5, depending on how many trustees you're gonna establish. We don't really use notaries in trusts. It's not necessary because it's private. Yeah, there's no notaries involved with the trust side of things. It's all private, so we don't get in their public worlds. You don't need to utilise a notary at all, because you're rendering your documents as public if you're using a notary public. So that's not where we're going to be going. We're not venturing down that road at all. So the only costs, as far as I'm aware, is maybe printing and maybe some decent quality paper for your documents, and cost of postage. And besides, obviously, you're studying. Now, the litigation side, I won't make any well, I won't mince my words on this one. You will need to invest in books. You will need to invest in material. If it's no point fighting people who are armed with knowledge and information that you need to be aware of, and so some of the books are a bit costly, and you need to be able to invest in them eventually. We'll do our best to give you support with the common, like case law and things like that, and where to look for certain statutes and acts and everything else that's available. But things like, especially the litigation side of things like something we use is called the Green Book, or the White Book you may have heard of. Then those are the kind of documentation that you will need to eventually invest in if you want to have a real upper hand and understand the court system particularly. But in litigation, the private trust document becomes public. No, that's the point. You learn to invoke a private court. Yeah, so you learn to invoke a private court. That's what I'm saying about litigation. You need to just know how to take control. Initially, it's public, but once you invoke a private court, then it's private. And so that's what you're going to learn. So the book to start off with, I'd say, Gary Watt's book is good. Which is the Equity and Trust book. In fact, the better one to get is, let me just find it. It's called Equity and Trust Law Directions. That's probably the best one to get. Equity and Trust Law Directions by Gary Watt, rather. That's a brand new book, second edition, probably about £20 or so, like something like that. Or Gilbert's Law Series, which I mentioned before, Law Summary, sorry, on trusts. Right. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is it okay for me to have a few moments of your time to explain to you about the courses in more detail, for those who are interested? So, because I'm about to make you a special offer, because the courses are coming up. The first one is on the 5th and 6th of April. So I'm just going to talk to you about the courses. So first of all, we have the courses are split up into 3 courses. We have Private Trusts Part 1, which I may have mentioned beforehand, which is really learning the basics of a trust and how to set a trust up and establish a trust, to allow the trust to pay off any debts that you may have in the public. All right, so this is what I would class as the basics of private trusts. We've got part 2, which is enforcement of trust, which I think I've highlighted a lot on this call and yesterday's call, but effectively understanding what equity is and how equity is going to come to your aid to enforce your trusts, okay, which you've expressed, and putting people and the trustees into play and understanding what your rights are as far as equitable rights are concerned. And then part 3, we're looking at litigation, which is vitally important, not necessarily just for trusts, but if in this commercial road per se. Quite frankly, a lot of people just don't understand the court route, and we get beaten up in the courtroom because we just don't have any knowledge at all. So this course is very useful, whether it's for trusts or otherwise, especially if you're going to be a litigant in person. I can't really stress that enough. So that's litigation. So let me explain each one in more detail. So what you're going to learn, I'm going to just read this out for you. So everyone should understand how the civil court system works. So I'm going to work backwards in terms of enforcement and litigation first. Everyone should understand how the civil court system works in this country. You could use this course to help you with any issue, even employment tribunals, okay? So the enforcement and litigation course, which it used to be a 4-day course from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. for 4 solid days. But I realise it's, even though I'm excited about it, it can be a bit intense and the brain can get a bit fried by day 4. So I've split it up into 2 separate workshops. Enforcement of trust is 2 days, and litigation of trust is 2 days, and the private trust part 1 course is also 2 days. So it's just split week 1, week 2, week 3, just to make life a bit easier for your mental capacity, really. Now, I would say anyone who's not been on the basic private trust course with me, it's mandatory to go on that first. If you have been taught trusts, say by Morpheus, if you know who he is, I taught Morpheus, so I'm pretty confident that if he's covered the basics of you on the private trust element, then I would allow you to come on part 2 and part 3. If you have not been taught by Morpheus or Wealth Guardian Education, then quite frankly you do need to go on the basic trust course first. So those on the call who know what I'm talking about will understand what I mean there. Anybody else, I would just say that you just need to get on the private trust course and learn the basics properly. Then I know that you know the basics, rather than coming from a position of being taught wrong or completely opposite to what I'm used to, and we get more confusion and then the group can't move forward. So to date, this is the only course of its kind that teaches you how to enforce your trusts and how to operate within the system of civil courts. Learn how to win court cases either as a defendant or a claimant, how to compel trustees to perform. If they fail to obey your orders, then you can compel them. Learn to take control of every commercial situation and no longer cringe in fear if you receive a letter from the courts itself or any creditor from that matter. This course should be at least 5 days long, but to keep costs down, which is definitely a vital aspect of where I'm coming from, with the accelerated learning techniques used by Wealth Guardian Education, then you should be able to get a solid foundation within the 3 parts of the course which I have explained. So you will develop new skills and techniques to enable you to take control of the courtroom if you're going to deal with enforcement and in litigations, especially whether in the county court or the high court. Learn where and how to find the rules to control the court and to restrict any judge's decision. Learn how to write your own statements of case and particulars, how to get access to the tools that solicitors and barristers may use to give yourself the advantage over the opponents. Build confidence and clarity, make the court your friend and not your enemy. And do you know your county court judges from your masters and justices? Okay, that's very important. Learn the do's and the don'ts when dealing with the courts. Never fall for their dirty tricks and games that the county court judges play all over, all the time. Learn to keep your private affairs truly private in the courtroom. Learn to deal with most kinds of judges, from the pit bulls to the little terriers and the deceptive poodles, because they're all there. They try many, many games and much, much more. There is a huge area of learning, and I've done my best to keep it pretty tight for you to, when you walk away, you're confident with with your knowledge, and hopefully these 3 days of webinar would give you some insight as to where I'm coming from. So the course outline, as far as the enforcement course for the 2 days is concerned, you're going to understand about equity jurisprudence, go through the maxims in more detail, what they mean in more detail and how to apply them, look at equitable remedies, facts and law, getting rid of the gatekeepers, so to speak, the Chancery and the High Court, looking at the CPR rules and the forms, invoking inherent and exclusive equity jurisdiction and equitable relief, and what we call your pleadings, which is venturing into the litigation side of things and drafting your claim. As far as the litigation course is concerned, we're going to go, it's really just court role play, with added emphasis every time we start a new one. We're going to learn how to prove your claim and get it into the court, the power of the commercial lien, if that's what you'll be utilising sometimes in terms of due process procedure, the power of discovery and evidence rules and how to apply them, how to allocate cases, mediation for small claims if that's something you're going to go through, the honour dishonor process, how to win before you even go in the courtroom, how to get access to case law and authorities, dealing with your issues with the court, especially pertaining to trusts, that wonderful words of letter before action that comes in your post, how do you deal with it, how do you strike out claims, and much more besides. On top of the course, for part one, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. For part two, with regards to enforcement, by the time we're done with going through the maxims and understanding that, and then utilising that as an introduction to litigation, those 2 days will go very quickly. But the main thing is your equitable eyes will be opened, and you can utilise it for drafting your own trust, and being a lot more flexible with how you want to do things for your own purposes. Then the litigation side of it, the emphasis is really courts. So the other side of it is the actual, to and fro of letters, dealing with solicitors if they're dealing with you, or banks or creditors who are writing you and telling you rubbish like there's no basis of law, basis of what you're saying in UK law, etc. How do you come back at them and always stay in the power of authority? That's where you want to be, the position of authority. So this is really going to help you and knowing what to say and how to say it and how to formulate it with the due process, understanding the power of notices, because this is really going to be your best friend in the area of trusts, and also discovery. Again, in the area of trusts, understanding the difference between what a statement of cases and a bill in equity. There's two different things. How we're going to dissect the procedures in court to get to those points in time. Beyond the actual 2-day litigation course, there is also a series of webinars that I have currently running at the moment every Monday. Now, because it was a 4-day course initially, it just came up with the name Day 4, and at the moment we're on, I think, week 6 of the Day 4, and I'm just going to keep going until we've exhausted it. So by default, when you sign up to the litigation side of things, besides the 2 days of workshops, you will obviously get access to the video recordings that we've done so far, teaching you about the court process, because it's quite a dry subject, so it's not something you can sit down in a workshop and do. I'd rather just teaching. You can go through the books in your own time and work through them for your own personal cases. So when I say Day 4, it's basically an extension to the 2-day course of the litigation side of things. And so every week we will have a webinar and dissect like the CPR rules and drafting techniques and defences and replies and everything else, and answer questions as well pertinent to you. That's part of the package as well for the litigation side of things. So having said all of that, so what is it going to cost you? What's the price? And hopefully I've gone through what is in it for you. What's the main thing you're going to get out of this? Is pretty much the creme de la creme of knowing how to position yourself in this world that we're living in at the moment. So in order to get on the course, as I said, it's mandatory to go on part 1. unless you've been on my course previously, or as an allowance, I'll allow those who's been on Morpheus courses for trusts, unless you feel that you want to just start from scratch anyway. It's really up to you how you want to go about that. Now, I charge for my personal time in terms of workshops is £500 per day per person. So for a 2-day course, you're looking at £1,000 per person. Okay, that's basically my rate for what I teach, no matter what course, whether it's OID, whether it's standard courses, trusts. For my day, then that's what I charge. Now, I don't typically tend to do the 9 to 5 route. I'm literally starting you from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. So that's just 12 hours of hard learning and teaching. I don't stand at the front of a room. I don't use PowerPoint because I can't stand it. You don't learn with PowerPoint. You're more listening. Sorry, you're more reading what's written on the screen and listening to what I have to say. We've been taught in school, we've got to make notes, and so you miss the words that are coming out of my mouth. So therefore, you spend a lot of money and you come home to think, well, what on earth did I learn? How do I do this? Let me go over it all over again. I don't believe in teaching that way. We've got learners out there who are more visually appealing. They prefer visual concepts to learning. They've got others who are more kinesthetic and like hands-on approach to learning, and you've got those who are more auditory and just like to talk for their learning. So I incorporate all three to emphasize and maximize people's ability to learn. So because we're going to do a lot of talking, a lot of role plays, a lot of practical subjects, and challenging your ability to learn by writing down what I've told you, or what I've explained to you, so I know that you're learning and you're sharing and building your knowledge. But when you go home, it sticks in your brain rather than, well, what on earth did I learn? How do I go about utilizing this concept? Or trying to charge you more money to come to another course, which a lot of people try to do. I don't really believe in that. So yeah, it's intense, but it needs to be intense because you're in an environment of learning, and I hope you understand and appreciate that from just these webinars that I love to teach. So that's how my days are structured, from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Obviously, you've got lunch and breaks and everything else, and it's a lot of fun when you come on the courses. So this is because you have taken time to listen to me and you have signed up on this course, then I'm going to reward you with an offer which is a one-time offer, and it is a very exclusive and special offer. You are the only ones who are going to get access to this particular deal. Everybody else who's on my general list will not get access to this deal that I'm about to make you. So I would really encourage you to take action quickly and really utilize and take advantage of this offer, which I think is going to be quite well, some people may say I might be mad, but I'm not. I'm just wanting to benefit you for your time. So let's just get down to it. So as I said to you before, a 2-day course is typically going to cost £1,000 per person. Now, as I said, I don't like huge groups because it limits my ability to teach. So really, I'm going to cap it at 15 people for each course. At the moment, there's like 50 people signed up to this particular webinar series. So if you're going to take action, you need to really move relatively quickly. Now, the regular price, which is going to be marketed to my general list, is going to be £697. I've already incorporated a discount in there for people to utilise that, and that's for £697 for part 1. It's going to be £697 for part 2. And it's going to be £897 for part 3 because of the webinar element that's attached to it also. So it's a lot more content than the first 2 courses. The total combined course, the combined price for all 3 courses, you're looking at already £2,291 if you were to do all 3 courses. So here's basically, I'm just going to cut to the chase and let you know where I'm going to go with this. If you are what I call one who likes to take action quickly, and only if you can afford it, I don't want anyone to break the bank or get into debt because of this, unless you're going to pay it off. That's up to you, but I'm not going to encourage that. Then pretty much I'm not going to charge the £2,291. I'm going to give you a discount of 50%, which works out at £1,145 and 50 pence to be precise, and that's for all 3 courses. Okay, does anyone need me to repeat that? That's for all 3 courses. So pretty much the discount we're looking at, rather than spending £500 per day per person, which is for a 2-day course, that's £1,000 for one course. Okay, you're looking at, for all 3 courses, that's £3,000. I'm basically saying forget that for today. Forget the fact that my regular price is £697 for the first 2 courses and £897 for number 3 course, which combined I said was £2,291. I'm saying forget that. Pretty much I'm going to slice it at 50% for those on this particular webinar series. Okay, as I said, there's over 50 people, but I'm only limiting it, and I'm not being horrible about this, but my aim is to teach and I can't teach 50 people in a room. It's just not going to work. So this price is for those who like to take action very quickly. So it works out, you're looking at, I think it's £381 per course, which is a significant reduction in the price. So as I said, that it's a one-time offer, and those who can afford it at a lump sum, £1,145 and 50 pence. That's for all 3 courses combined. You got to understand, the last time I taught all 3 trust courses was November, December last year. Just for the litigation and enforcement course, which was 4 days, people paid £1,500 for. That was just December last year. All right. So I'm letting you know this is a one-time offer. It's a special offer. And I want people to take action. I want people to benefit from this. And it's to say thank you for listening to me for these last 3 days. Now, not everyone can afford that kind of money. I appreciate that. But everyone I know would want to come on the course. So what have I done to incorporate those, all of you? Well, the fact of the matter, does everyone understand the first part of the offer, by the way? I hope I've made that very clear. Now, for those who saying, well, look, as much as the deal's awesome, Richard, and by the way, you've got 24 hours to utilise that deal. So pretty much come Saturday night, that offer will not be on the table anymore. I should just need to make that mention that very quickly to you. And I'll send you an email with this written down properly so you can digest it as well. Not to worry. Now, for those who can't afford a lump sum up front, you've got another option. You can either pay stage by stage. So for part 1, as I said, the regular price is £697, which is a reduction. However, if you decide to take action because of the fact that you're on this course today, I don't mind, then the price will be reduced to £497. And effectively, that's the special offer. If you can't afford that immediately, which is, I can appreciate that, then all you need to do is pay a deposit of £100, and that will lock that price of £497. It's non-refundable, this deposit, okay? So you need to pay the deposit of £100 within 24 hours, all right? And that will lock this special price of £497. Now, the first course is on the 6th and 7th of April, so therefore I'll expect the remainder of the payment by the 4th of April, which is Wednesday the 4th. So you're looking at just over a week to get the remainder of that money to me, and I'll give you further details via email after this webinar. So it's 4th of April. So you can pay the lump sum, which will be good. If you can't have all the cash ready right now, but you know you want to get on the course, and providing there are seats available, then £100 will lock that price and secure it for you, okay? But you do have to take action and move quickly for me to accept the £100 as a deposit. Remember, it is non-refundable, so only pay if you are certain you're going to be on the course. I'm not going to withhold it or reserve it for another course next month or anything like that. And that applies for the other 2 courses. So part 1 is £697. I've reduced it to £497, and even if you can't pay the £497 today, you can pay £100 to secure that. For part 2 is exactly the same. It's £697. I've reduced it down to £497. You do have to pay a £100 deposit to reserve part 2. Part 2, the dates for part 2 starts on the I've got here enforcement is Thursday the 12th and Friday the 13th of April, and all my courses are Thursday and Friday, and they're not Friday, Saturday, or Saturday, Sunday. I don't do weekends because I'm a pastor, so I'm busy preaching. So it is Thursday, Friday. So bear that in mind for work and taking time off, etc. So as I said, £100 deposit will secure and lock the price of £497 if you can't pay that up front. But you do need to pay the £100 within 24 hours. And for part 3, it's exactly the same thing again. Part 3 is the price is £897 because there's an extra portion, as I said, with the webinar series, and that price has now been reduced down for £697 rather than £897, and a £100 deposit will lock the price and secure the £697 deal. As I said, no one on my general list will be getting this offer. Please do bear that in mind. So what it means is that if you want to go on all 3 courses, then you need to pay £300 as a deposit to lock and save this offer for each course. If you know you only want to do 1 course, then again, you just take the appropriate action. Does everyone understand that? It's this type of why, if I haven't confused you. Okay, that's fine. I don't accept promissory notes because I'm operating in the private realm, so the cash should be fine for me, or debit card, credit card, if that's what you want to use. And that's pretty much the offer I'm making to you. Now, if you still say, Richard, I'd love to come on the course, but I'm not in a position to meet these particular options, and that's fine. It's just mean that at this time right now, it's not for you. And that's fair enough. And there's no shame in admitting that you can't meet those requirements right now. In fact, that's a very noble thing to do, to understand you can't do something. So, however, I still want you to benefit. And I do have audios available from last year. So it's not going to be live. It's not going to be a workshop. It's not going to be face-to-face. But I do have audios available. I have the private trust course, which is the equivalent to part 1. Okay. At the moment, that stands, I believe, at 9 CDs. It works out about 11 hours of content, not including all the breaks and everything else that was involved with the 2 days at 10 hours, 12 hours each. I normally sell those at $297 for the package, and that will I'll come with the individual price in the moment. I'm just going to do it as a package. Part 2 and part 3 were done together because I told you I used to do it as a 4-day course. So it's a total of 18 CDs. It's about 20 hours of content in total, which is part 2 and part 3 combined. So the total price, if you were to get... Oh, by the way, there's a course that I taught in September last year, and there's also one for November last year. Okay, so I'm going to chuck in both of those, so you've got a double barrel amount of workshops for part 2 and part 3 combined. Okay, which I call the enforcement and litigation course. So let me just to recap, so no one's confused. You got part 1 private course, which is 11 CDs. You got part 2 and part 3 combined. Okay, which works out at 18 CDs for the November course, and I think it was 13 CDs for the September course. So you're getting a package of obviously 1, 2, 3 sets. All right. Now the total package combination is £697 for all of that, and if you're in a position, then I'm basically going to slash that price down for one time. If you can do it at one lump sum payment of $347. If you say, well, Richard, I still can't afford that price, then you can basically pay in installments, and I'll just do it $247 per month for 3 months. I think that's what it works out at. So I hope I haven't confused you. So if you want the audio package, then that's available to you. I would highly recommend that you would probably go on the workshops if that's okay with yourselves. I will send you all an email tonight with fully detailing what I've just discussed in the webinar. I'm hoping this video will be ready to send out for you tonight as well. And I'll send the necessary payment links for you to come on board. Again, obviously the best option in terms of value would be the offer a 50% discount for those of you who are in a position to do that. However, I hope you understand that this is a one-time offer, and it will not be available, especially the 50% discount and the £100 security deposit after 24 hours. So basically, I'll give you a time when I send the emails to when you need to take action by. Please don't pass this link to any friends, because I know exactly who's on my list, and anybody else outside of that will not be able to benefit from that deal. As I said, I cannot really have more than 15 people on the course. I know financially it might be brilliant, but as for your learning, it will be a nightmare. And I'd rather have your learning as priority than the money will always come as far as I'm concerned. So I'd rather focus on giving you the value that you deserve. So I hope that makes sense. If there's any questions, then let me know. But otherwise, thank you very much for your time. I thank you for lasting for 3 days, and I will make these webinars available to you as ASAP very, very soon. So thank you very much. Unless you have any questions for me, then I bid you a wonderful Friday. So the dates after the 5th and the 6th of April, just before you go, let me just clarify those for you. I did send out an email to everyone, but I'll just recap here. So part 1 is Thursday the 5th and Friday the 6th of April. Part 2, the dates I have here for the enforcement part is Thursday the 12th and Friday the 13th of April. And then part 3 is Thursday 19th and Friday 20th of April. And it's in central London, not Heathrow. It'll be in central London as well, to make life a lot easier for everybody. So yeah, that's basically where we're at with those dates. The audios for September, November enforcement litigation courses, are they going to be similar to the new enforcement litigation courses? Let me reread that question. The audios from September and November enforcement litigation courses, are they going to be similar to the... Yes, basically the content's exactly the same. The paperwork, the supporting documents that will sent out with that will be available in these upcoming courses will be the ones that I've used in the previous courses, and therefore the everything will be the same as far as the content's concerned. The recordings are the quality of recordings are very good, so you shouldn't really have that much of an issue with the audios, except that you can't see what I'm writing. That's pretty much the only downside to it. But otherwise, thank you very much, everyone, and thank you for your comments. I will be running another set of courses. I think it will probably be June, July time when I do the next set of trust courses in terms of workshops. So yep, I'm hoping that the offer is an irresistible one rather, for you to take up the option sooner rather than later. So I will send out the email to you, as I said, and hopefully you'll take up that position ASAP. Thank you very much again for your time, everybody, and have a wonderful weekend. And look out for the email. It'll probably come in a small hour, so you'll probably get it in the morning when you wake up. But otherwise, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Quick question: will PDFs or documents be included with the CD? Yeah, everything. It'll be basically you're logging online, and it all will be there for you to utilize. That's pretty much there. It will be. Besides these webinars that you'll have access to, it will all be strictly audio. That's correct. Yes. Brilliant. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good night.